We're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and seek the truth with FBI whistleblower and common sense extremist, Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast for Monday, April 6, 2026, and we are back behind the microphone coming to you on Rumble and YouTube after a fun-filled Easter weekend. An update on that in a moment. But what are we going to do today? Well, today we're going to talk about the Trump administration continuing to go soft on mass deportations. The war in Iran might have some massive financial, economic consequences for Americans into the foreseeable future. Tax refunds now are more important than they've ever been. A J6er who is working for the Department of Justice has just resigned and given his reasons why. And also billionaires are fleeing to Florida, the land of milk and honey. So let's get after it. All right. Why bury the lead? For those who were there on Friday, the show was not live. It was lively. And I said the reason I had to pre-tape the show was because I was taking my family a few hours away to Palm Beach, Florida, to go and do some Florida man stuff, which was iguana hunting. I got to give you an update. You know, this podcast thing doesn't work out. I think we got ourselves a couple of studs who could go down and start their own business because we didn't smoke one. We didn't smoke two. We smoked 9 iguanas in a 4-hour tour. It was awesome. My wife and I, my 2 sons, it was definitely eye-opening experience. I know for her, she was just kind of like horrified that the boys were super mega excited about just taking headshots at lizards. But, you know, that's what boys love to do. They were highly accurate using those pellet guns. And then, in fact, Madam Friend got in on it herself, smoked an iguana, completely took off the head on one attempt of her own. She's got 1 kill to her name. And myself, I happened to jump off of the boat at one point and use a noose to wrangle one around the neck. It sounds horrible. It kind of is, but it's kind of awesome. And we were really excited. And we're going to have to go back. I'm going to give a major shout out. I'm going to give a Google review to our tour guide. His name was Carlos. I will actually put a link to his business in today's show because very few people have the opportunity to share and market for somebody like that who's just kind of like a stud, who's a dude who's a firefighter, and on his side hustle he takes out families to go smoke a bunch of iguanas. And I want to give him as much prompting and as much pumping as I possibly can. So I will put a link to his business if you find yourself in that area and you want to go have fun for 4 hours out on the boat in the sun and kill some iguanas. Highly recommend. All right. So back to business. What are we talking about today? Well, I gave the sort of lead up to tease out the stories we're going to cover, but I want to just go back a step or two because if you remember, I had a reaction. The reaction was to the pep rally that is the State of the Union. It's a pep rally. It's a stump speech. It's an opportunity for the president to get up there and wave the pom-poms, get the fans really activated and encouraged and excited to go out and cheer for the big game tomorrow. But that is contingent on the follow through. If you have the pep rally and everybody's amped up and you go out there and you lay an egg, the big fans are just sitting on their hands. The casual fans, if they're even there or not paying attention, they're scrolling their phones. If they're watching on TV, they're changing the channel. What are the results? You can't allow your opponent to just march on down through you and score touchdowns at will. You have to respond. You have to produce, and it can't be in the form of a flyover, which is what the kinetic operation, definitely not a war. How dare you call me a stewardess? I'm a flight progress coordinator, is going on in the Middle East right now. What were the deliverables we talked about at the time? Mass deportations. Maybe it wasn't number 1, but it was definitely 1A of the 2 big items that were on the list of the Americans when they went to the polls in 2024, mass deportations and inflation. Well, inflation is another part of that, affordability. So mass deportations, affordability, and weaponization. Government weaponization. That was the word for several years. This is an out of control, weaponized government. We have to stand up a weaponization committee under the great leadership of Jim, spelled with a G, Jordan, in the House of Representatives, so we can get some whistleblowers out there and find out what they have to say. And then if we milk them and exploit them for everything they're worth, we will never call them again. But we won't tell them that, right? So, mass deportations, weaponization, affordability. Are we getting some first downs? Are we moving the ball down the field? Or does it look like we're laying an egg out there? Well, let's get to the stories of the day. And the first one is a very long piece. It's an expose that comes from the New York Times, at one point a newspaper, about one Stephen Miller. Headline reads, Stephen Miller is still pursuing his immigration agenda, but more quietly. Now, the New York Times here interviewed like 25 plus people in order to write this giant expose and dunk on the deputy chief of staff for the president. And they had some recollections about meetings that he had about a year ago, because now he has started to pivot, as has the administration. Now, Stephen Miller might, in his strategy and his tactics that he's using, have pivoted. But as they lay out here in the New York Times, it does not appear that his philosophy has. So if we go back last spring, 2025, they reveal you about this story, this meeting that they had over at ICE. Stephen Miller sat down for an update and they said, hey, what do you want us to do? We're looking for some guidance. Are we getting the worst offenders, or are we going to be a little more aggressive? And he basically said, you're unshackled. I want to see results. Push the limits is the quote. Go and get everybody, which I think is in keeping with the American people's mandate that was set in 2024. Mass deportations. You had the Biden Autopan administration, the human Roomba, allowing 30 to 50 million illegal aliens to come in to our borders. We have to eject them out of here by any means necessary. So Stephen Miller is all in for that. And then 8 months later, now we're starting to pivot from the Trump administration at large, and Stephen Miller has had to sort of change his approach. Maybe not his preferred outcome, but the way he's going to go about doing it. But potatoes, if you muzzle the guy, if you limit what he's able to actually give the directives to the people who are seeking his guidance, then there's going to be a fall off in the success you're going to have as far as deporting millions of illegal aliens. So 8 months later, we've toned down the immigration strategy, and that really started right after the Renee Good and the Alex Preddy shootings. So at that point, Stephen Miller's television appearances fell off. They said in New York Times that he was getting on Fox News like once every 4 days, and then it was twice a month. So, roughly cut in the third. Then also ICE began to shift from the militarized street sweeps, as they're characterized by the New York Times, to a campaign for more targeted and less visible arrests. So what is Stephen Miller doing? I said he's not changed what his outcome is, but the way he's going to go about doing it certainly has. He's trying to think outside the box. Nobody can accuse Stephen Miller of being a low IQ guy. He's definitely really, really smart. So what are the strategies that he's using here as the Trump administration has gone soft on the mass deportations? He wants to squeeze undocumented immigrants, as they're called, illegal aliens, New York Times, and those with legal protections, such as making it harder to get public housing or other benefits. Yeah, I don't think illegal aliens are entitled to bennies such as public housing, but I guess they're able to get them even in Donald Trump's America. Stephen Miller is also focused on ramping up deportations of non-citizens to faraway countries. Gosh, the pretzels that these jerks, these communist journalists do in the New York Times to tie themselves into knots, to not say illegal aliens, which is a legal term. The undocumented immigrants or non-citizens. He wants to send them far away to lands that are not familiar to them, so that they say, you know what? I don't want to risk getting caught and shipped off to Liberia. I will just go back to El Salvador, where I have a social safety net for myself because I have family and friends there. Miller has asked for information on how immigrants, illegal aliens, use credit cards. He wants to actually cut off their financial resources, and then that would necessitate them leaving, or I guess working for straight cash. And we've seen a fall off in the cash usage now. I mean, there's stores out there that don't even accept it anymore. But the takeaway here that I want to have for our purposes today on the AMRAD pod is that regardless of what Stephen Miller is trying to do, thinking outside the box and coming up with alternatives to push forward the agenda that he allegedly wants to see happen, mass deportations, push the limits. However, there's been a fall off in the number of deportation arrests. So from January of this year to February of this year, there were 11% fewer because the Trump administration is pursuing something completely different. And we can get into that now from NPR. Headline: after the Minnesota surge, ICE is moving to a quieter enforcement approach. So the enforcement operation in Minnesota was aggressive and highly visible. The tactics were also very politically unpopular. Now, this is a quote from the Department of Homeland Security, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Mark Wade Mullins, quote, "I would love to see ICE become a transport more than a front line. If we can get back into just simply working with law enforcement, we're going to them, we're picking up these criminals from the jail." And he talks about, or and NPR goes into the 287G agreements. 287G. It's essentially a memorandum of understanding, a contract between the federal government and local governments. It's a task force arrangement. So we deputize your guys, we pay your overtime, your extra manpower, we give you some training and some goodies, some nice golden handcuffs, and then you go out and do what we want you to do. Now, in this case, it would be for mass deportations. But you can see the pivot and the actual opportunity here to tone down the rhetoric and the public relations nightmare, and also the overall results, which I just went into, an 11% drop in deportations over a month. Well, if you're dealing with task forces and they're guys that are super amped up to go ahead and do the thing, that could be a force multiplier. That's great. But if the task force is just guys who get the deputization and we tell them, hey, if you do a traffic stop and the guy, he no habla, then maybe you ask a couple questions and determine that he's an illegal alien and then just give us a call. Well, what are you doing when I'm out there doing the job I'm already paid to do, like patrol the community, engage in traffic stops, take reports? And if I take a report from somebody, again, his name is Raul and he no habla, maybe I do a little bit digging here as a local cop, but what are you doing? Are you providing any intelligence? Are you routing certain directives to us? Because the conditions of our agreement, our 287G arrangement, the task force, where you provide some valuable intelligence, it helps us in our mission to assist you with the deportations while simultaneously fulfilling our charge to serve our communities? Or are you just going to sit back and wait for us to interdict somebody by accident because we happen to see a tail light out and then this guy winds up being from El Salvador? That's what it sounds like to me, because the public relations is more important. The Trump administration and the Department of Homeland Security, now that they've got Mark Wayne Mullins in there, he's going to play ball. He doesn't want them on the front page of the news, even though they're always going to be on the front page of the news because the news hates the Trump administration. We're back to our Mean Girls analogy. I will never understand it. You won the it kid. He dumped his girlfriend and came to you. That was the voter. The reason he came to you was because he liked what you had to offer, which was mass deportations. Why would you course correct, or incorrect in this case, to soften what you're doing? To try to impress the Mean Girls friends so that they like you better? The Mean Girls friends being NPR and the New York Times and Washington Post? Or do you just lean into exactly the reason that the it kid left his girlfriend for you? Seems like we're doing the exact opposite of what should be happening here, and we're laying some eggs in the field. And as a result, the fans are starting to check out. And if you need any proof that the Mean Girls and their friends are not interested in being partners or even giving you the benefit of the doubt, look no further than this laughable piece from the New York Times. So the headline here, and it is a very, very long piece. I will put the link in the show notes if you want to torture yourself. Headline: their parents were taken by ICE. The children had to raise one another. I've told you a million times, guys. They have these stories in their hip pocket. They were written before Donald Trump even took office. They're going to try to hit you in the feels. And it seems to be working because Mark Wayne Mullins and the Trump administration, with the exception of Stephen Miller, seems to go all along with it. They don't want to have politically unpopular, as it's characterized in the NPRs of the world, outcomes. They want everybody to just be happy. And I'm sorry, ejecting 50 million people is going to have some collateral damage, things that might upset your sensibilities. But that doesn't matter because we got a country to run here, and the federal government has a very limited charge to fulfill its social compact obligations with the American people. One of those is to protect the border, the sovereignty of the country, and to eject and deport those who violate our sovereignty. If you don't do that, you're not doing your darn job. And you're going to face the whirlwinds when people like myself and others who are enjoying us here on the AmRad Pod, available on YouTube and Rumble, and later on Spotify at AmRad Pod. Guys, here's your reminder. Make sure you give us the follow and the subscribes and the likes. Do all those things. Really appreciate it. And at some point, if you haven't already, make sure you go over to Spotify. Even if you don't use it, follow us there. Give it a play, turn the volume down, and we can get this sucker monetized. That way I won't have to go down and start my own iguana killing business. But I don't know. At this point, it looks like it might be pretty fun. All right. But I want to go to this piece from the New York Times, which I told you, it's hilarious if you have the stomach to read through it and find out how much BS they drop on you, because the story is rich. So they focus in, as they always do, on the one person, Andrea Garcia. So in January, immigration agents raided the family's home. It's a small town on the border, and they arrested Andrea's parents. But Andrea and all of her siblings, ages 11 through 22, more on that in a minute, they're all citizens because they were born to two parents who are both illegal aliens, and because of the birthright citizenship policies that have been adhered to for far too long in this country, they're considered American citizens who are fully able to reap the bennies, the welfare, the public housing, the Social Security. Their parents got across the border, dropped 6 kids, and now they're all American citizens. So they don't have their parents. And they want you to think that this is like the boxcar kids. Man, that's an old reference. Remember that story? They were actual kids. They were children. What were they? Like 10, 11, 12 was the oldest one, that were raising themselves in a train boxcar. No. Andrea is the matriarch, as they weigh in on here, because the New York Times really likes to have girl power. But what they don't tell you is that in addition to her being 22, her brother's 21, and she has another sister who they don't say the specific age, but they tell you that she's a legal adult. So 3 of the 6 kids are actually adults. This is hardly babies raising babies. And the babies that are being raised, they're 17, so almost an adult, 15, essentially operating as an adult, and 11. My son just turned 12. He can wipe his own butt, take a shower, and brush his teeth. You're not changing any diapers. It's not that dire. It's not that difficult. Now, the one sister who they don't give you the age for, but she's an adult. This is where they hit you with it. Her name is Anna. Anna, as an adult, before the raid, she was considering a career in law enforcement. Well, don't you feel bad now? She was going to be a cop. She was going to help protect and defend her fellow citizens who she shouldn't actually be a member of. Don't you want to just allow this through? Do you really want to break up these families? Yes, I do. And all these kids should not be legal citizens. They should all have to go with mom and dad. That would actually be a great way to not break up families, even though 3 of the 6 are adults and they would be broken up, because that's the way the system works. Because when you're an adult, you don't stay home with mommy and daddy forever. But if we want to do that, if we wanted to keep these families intact, why don't we just identify them as what they actually are? And that is all illegal aliens, and send them down across the border. Now, the quote we got from Anna, the wannabe cop, is that, quote, "They treated us like we were the worst criminals. I can't be a part of that." So now I guess we've lost out on Anna. And if you have any visuals here, if you happen to be watching on Rumble or YouTube later on Spotify, not the physical specimen that you would want actually coming if you dialed 911. Now, one more thing that I'll say. The father here, the father who was separated from his children through no fault of his own, or maybe it was. I mean, he came across the Mexican American border in seek of a better opportunity so he could work. He was providing valuable services in construction. Guy's not designing computers, okay? He was working construction, just getting his hands dirty like good old Americans do. He has been deported 8 times. So this is not something that they've never encountered before. He's been deported 8 times and returned every single time. So spare me, he should have been treated better. 8 times. He violated the law in this country. And his family now, because of his misdoings, because he didn't establish a life in the country one of the 7 prior times we sent him back down there, now they have to reap the consequences of that. I'm sorry, not sorry. Don't feel bad for Anna, the wannabe cop, or the actual main girl, Andrea, in this case. And yet, these are the stories that are the public relations nightmares that make things so politically unpopular. And as a result, we're laying eggs on mass deportations. We've seen the numbers fall off. And I guess we're just going to sit around and wait on the cops to hopefully pull over on a traffic stop an illegal alien. But if, he's just been deported 8 times, but he hasn't, while he's here, murdered somebody, then I guess we'll just let him go. That is not going to get the fans on their feet. It's not going to get the diehards amped up. It's certainly not going to keep the casual fans paying attention. They're turning the channel over. But when they turn the channel over, the question is, do they have cable to actually do that? Because people are starting to feel the squeeze. Now, let's move over from mass deportations to some affordability issues. This is a report from the Washington Post, because democracy dies in darkness. Headlines: Americans are feeling the Iran war's economic pain with hints of worse ahead. Now, they've got some interesting figures here about what the squeeze is financially, economically on the American people. Amazon is now adding a fuel surcharge. Mortgage rates have risen. Gasoline is $4.09 per gallon. That's the nationwide average. Diesel is $5.53. Bank of America says inflation is going to hit 4% in the next few months. Well, I mean, they're prognosticating. We don't know if that's true, but 1 and 1A, right? Illegal immigration and inflation. Remember Biden inflation? 4%. 4% month over month. We're already looking at hamburger meat that's almost $7. And it's going to go higher. And inflation doesn't reverse itself. Never in the course of my natural life have I ever seen the prices come down because the buying power of the dollar grew. It's always some sort of outside circumstance, or it's a sale, something to get you in there. Hey, we got to get you into the Costco, so we're going to offer the rotisserie chicken at $4.99, even though that thing probably costs them, I don't know, $25 to raise from infancy to slaughterhood. We're trying to bring you in there so that when you do, you say, oh, well, while I'm here, I'll buy 144 pudding pops. Inflation at 4%? What else is we looking at here? Well, Washington Post has a couple more. The agriculture industry is about to get wrecked. So exporters in South America and Asia, they have a shortage of actual shipping containers, refrigerated shipping containers, because you have to keep the food cold because they are trapped in the Gulf. These vessels can't actually get ashore to get the food that has to be put into them. How do you think that's going to hit with food supplies or lack thereof? Will that cause prices to go up? Yes. Will that lead to people maybe starving? Yes. We have some fertilizer crises. Madam Friend works in that industry here. Urea is one of the big giant fertilizers, and that's been tied up now in the Strait of Hormuz, and the costs have gone up by 50%. And who uses urea? Oh, that's right, the farmers who plant corn, the corn that gets used not just in your tortillas, but to feed animals. So the price, the input to raise animals is now going to go up exponentially, which will cause hamburger meat to hit what? 11, $12 a pound? And we're not done yet. We got this other matter here that I hadn't even thought of. Helium. Well, I just know it as a thing you put into a balloon, right? Helium is used for semiconductors. and now 1/3 of the helium supply has been blocked off in the Strait of Hormuz. And actually, there was some bombing that went on in Qatar, and that hit a factory there, which is going to keep them off the line for like 5 years until they rebuild. So now we're going to have a shortage of semiconductors, which we're using for things like artificial intelligence and other consumer products. And the last one, if the war lasts for 6 months, the global economy, starved of 13 million barrels of oil each day, will enter a recession. Recession in 6 months. Have you looked at the calendar? It's April 6th. So you're telling me October, October of 2026 is when the recession hits? What's going on within the next couple weeks after that? What will have actually already most likely have begun at that point? Oh, that's right. The opportunity for the fans in the stands to just get up and leave the game. The election. You're laying an egg and you're going to continue laying an egg, and people aren't happy, and for good reasons. And that's going to include not just the regular people, not just the people like Andrea and Anna, the young out there. What about one of the biggest voter blocks out there? The folks that we have to make sure we never touch Social Security and Medicare, right? The people over the age of 65. Well, they seem to be feeling the squeeze too. This is a report from NPR. Headline: 65, single, seeking a roommate. More seniors are being priced out of living alone. So our guy here, his name is David West, and he goes into his sad story. It's like a country music song, right? He got divorced, his brother died, his dog died. But because he's getting older, a lot of the clients that he was working with have also died or are no longer in the industry, and he's had a hard time keeping an income. Now he's burned through all his cash, he's damaged his credit, and he has moved at age 72 in with a perfect stranger because housing is too expensive. Can't afford the studio apartment, one bedroom anymore because he's been priced out. Now, why is there a housing shortage? I mean, there's multiple reasons. You don't want to blame everything on one big thing, but I can think of one really big thing. One really big thing that was in that list of stuff that I laid out in the very outset of the AMRAD pod today. Oh, that's right, mass deportations. 50 million people in this country that are just taking up space. There's causing a housing shortage. They're flooding into the schools. They're messing up with the logistics of the town, right? I mean, there's not enough parking spaces. There's not enough lanes on the road for their cars to drive. Hospital emergency rooms, because so many of those people don't have health insurance like you're required to have as an American citizen to be in good standing with Obamacare. They don't. So they just go to the ER. So if you break your leg, you're going to get there and be behind in line of abuela who's got a head cold and her diabetes is acting up, and the New York Times reporter is taking down her information, but only her first name because she fears reprisal, or she wants to keep anonymity for fear of being deported. But the elderly folks here, senior citizens, 65 and older, having to shack up with perfect strangers in order to make ends meet, to find a place to go. The stat line here was that 2023, so 3 years ago, more than a third of households headed by adults 65 and older struggled to pay housing costs, and the share is even bigger for women. Well, it's bigger for women because women outlive men, and a lot of times, Papa, he uses up the nest egg because he gets sick, and in the course of that happening, they have to have all the medical expenses, and the women live longer, and that's just a tragic part of getting older in life. And then also, it's NPR, so very much like New York Times and Washington Post, the meteor strikes tomorrow. Women minorities are going to be hurt worst, according to the narrative. Let's stay on this topic, but get to something that is going to impact everybody, and that is tax refunds. We're in April. Have you filed your taxes? Did you get your refund? Did you say thank you, government, for the interest-free loan that I gave you for the last year and for giving me the money back without interest? Yeah. So NPR, tax refunds are trending a bit higher this year. Here's how people are spending them. Well, the one big beautiful bill has led to about a $350 bump in the average tax refund in America. So $350 extra because the Trump administration and Congress got together, sat in a room, banged out a giant tax and spend bill in which the government steals, I mean taxes, like $1 trillion plus from you, and then spends it on things. And then at the end of it, they give you $350 and say, congratulations. But what are people using the money that is their money? You shouldn't be saying thank you to the government. They should be paying you interest on it. What are they using it on? Well, some people are getting the itch to spend because they think it's found money rather than their money, and they spend it on electronics and travel. But they're seeing an increase in things like paying off credit card debt, topping off savings accounts. About 2/3 of tax filers said that their tax refund was very or somewhat important to their financial situation. This is money that's been withheld from your paycheck for 52 weeks. And you are looking at the calendar knowing, gosh, I hope I get something back. I really need to get something back to buy an Xbox, to go on a cruise, to go iguana hunting. No, because my credit cards are maxed out. Or I've had to burn through almost all of my savings and I'm 72 years old and I'd rather not live with another man who's a perfect stranger to me. Because households this year in 2026, when they get that extra $350, thanks to the one big beautiful bill, they'll spend more than double that in gas increases. The average American household is bringing in $350 extra on their tax refund, and they're spending $750 extra in gasoline. How are we doing on affordability? Well, maybe we're 0 for 2, but we still got a chance. Let's talk weaponization. Now, this I saw on social media. This comes from Twitter. This is from Jared Wise at the Wise Jared. First the tweet, then the story behind it. Quote, today I resign from my position at the U.S. Department of Justice. I returned to Washington to fully expose the abuses by the FBI and DOJ against J6 defendants, but it became clear that this will only happen from outside of government. So I left and will do so. And at present, it's got 1.8 million views and it is 4 days old. Who is Jared Wise? Well, he was arrested for January 6th. So I've got the news report here from CBS News, give you a little background on it, and then we'll react to Jared Wise and was he wise for leaving the DOJ? The headline, Justice Department employee who was prosecuted over January 6th Capitol attack says he resigned. I love the editorializing going on in our communist news. Well, Jared Wise served as an FBI agent and a supervisor from 2004 to 2017. He left the FBI mid-career. I don't know this guy. I may have to poll some other people who I do know. It's kind of a head scratcher that he would leave after 13 years, but he did. He left. He was then charged, J6, facing felony charges with civil disorder, assaulting, resisting, impeding offenses, as well as he got the 4-pack of the misdemeanor charges. He served, though, in the current presidential administration in the Department of Justice as a counselor to Ed Martin, Eagle Ed, the DOJ pardon attorney who presided over the DOJ's weaponization working group. Now, Ed Martin didn't do much on the weaponization working group. Eagle Ed there, he was at the helm. There were big expectations, and I don't know if he met any of them. I believe there were 7 actual bullet points that were laid out for Eagle Ed and his ilk in the weaponization working group, and Jared Wise being a counselor there. I mean, was he right to leave? Well, I went and got the link to the former Attorney General's memorandum, Pam Bondi, and this is the memorandum that lays out and spells out what the weaponization working group is supposed to go into, and that would be number 1, Arctic frost, where we found out that a judge was colluding with Jack Smith investigators in order to go after Donald Trump, so no success. Alvin Bragg, Letitia James named as enemies of the state, and nothing's happened to them, including the BS cases they're going after Letitia James for. Nothing will happen. We have January 6th. Well, the weaponization with J6. Well, they brought in Jared Wise. Isn't that enough? No. Christine Crowder was the wife of a federal air marshal who the FBI surveilled as a terrorist for 2 years for January 6th. She never went to the Capitol. And the only reason that they realized that she wasn't the person that they thought she was because she was paralyzed on half of her body, which took them 2 years to figure out. And that doesn't even bring up like the Joe Biggs of the world, the guy who got a commutation, but as a military veteran still can't get his benefits that he's owed after having shed blood for the country. Or what about Brian Cole Jr., the J5, J6 pipe bomb subject, who's currently rotting in a cell because Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi and Janine Pirro, they all wanted to get in front of that press conference and say, we got our man, even though Shawnee Kirkhoff was already under investigation, had failed a polygraph. And then after having failed a polygraph, went to work for the CIA. She failed the polygraph because they asked her, did you plant the pipe bombs? And she lied and got caught lying. No, so we haven't addressed any of the J6 stuff. What about the radical traditional Catholic memo, number 4, the weaponization working group, where the United States government went after people who liked the Latin Mass? We're just coming off Easter weekend, so I'm sure there was many a masses in this country, but apparently in Richmond, Virginia, if you like to go to the Latin Mass and they were saying things that were pro-traditional marriage and anti-baby murder and against illegal aliens streaming across the border and liked the Second Amendment, that made you primed to become an anti-government extremist, a racially motivated violent extremist, a white supremacist. So we should probably infiltrate those parishes and try to get ourselves some terrorists. Any accountability there? No, Stanley Meter, who was the special agent in charge, he retired. He's now working as the top law enforcement guy for the state of Virginia. And the agent, or not the agent, soon to be agent, most likely, the analyst who wrote that memo identifying Catholics as terrorists, he can apply to be an agent and not have any extra scrutiny now, thanks to the great policy changes of Kash Patel. Parents of school board meetings, Carlton Peoples, he issued that directive to use national security resources to go after moms complaining about masks and transing the kids. He got to retire under Kash Patel. We have FACE Act violations, and I know they tried to bring those all up in Minneapolis, and that remains to be seen. Meanwhile, you have other people who were arrested on FACE Act violations, like Eva Edel, 90-year-old concentration camp survivor, praying outside an abortion clinic. What happened to the agents who did that so that they could just keep their $130,000 a year jobs? Were they disciplined? Were they terminated? Were there any sorts of weaponization working group referrals over to the Department of Justice for prosecution based on conspiracy against rights? No, we didn't get that. Oh, and then the last one, whistleblower retaliation. It was just, we never got along to that. So Eagle Ed failed, and Jared Wise said, I ain't down to clown. So now we've laid 3 eggs. No mass deportations, certainly pivoting away from them. Affordability is an issue, and we've done nothing for weaponization. You ready to change the channel? You really upset and despondent? Are you amped up to go out there tomorrow and cheer your team on? Or are you just thinking, whatever, they deserve what comes? Because that's sort of where I'm at. So what can we expect? We'd hoped to get those 3 things addressed in this very short timeline here. We hope to see the hamburger meat come down in price. We hope to see a few million illegal aliens ejected from the country, maybe a government gangster or 2 in handcuffs and seriously charged with crimes. We didn't get any of it. So if we project out into the future, what can we think to get? Now, I'm not even looking that short term. I'm looking less into 2026 and more into 2028 when we're going to have President American Psycho come in. I'm just calling it right now. Gavin Newsom. Well, what's the American Psycho doing out on the left coast right now? So I've got this piece. It's a local news. This guy is feeling so confident in wasting the money that his state has stolen, I mean tax from its citizens, that he just doesn't care. Major global PR firm Edelman wins a $19 million state contract to promote California in better light. So as long as the PR comes out great, then everybody's happy. It's the exact same playbook that the Trump administration is going to go with, except the PR and the news media is going to love this, whereas the news media hates Donald Trump because he's mean, orange, and literally Hitler. So Mean Girl style, I don't know why he's trying to evolve and pivot. But to Gavin Newsom, The governor's office of business and economic development picked the PR firm based in New York to take the task of improving California's national image. The contract is expected to run through the end of this year, $19 million over the next 9 months. Well, now, why would they need a PR upkeep? Well, there's a lot of fraud. And I've actually got a very long piece on that, but we don't have time for that today. I'll get into it later this week. I do have a couple others, though, that are worth sharing. Here's this one out of Los Angeles. Headline from Front Page Magazine: California achieves a $1 million per unit homeless housing. Really good stewards of the taxpayer money. So, as a background, if we go back 8 years, in 2018, the homeless housing units being built in Los Angeles cost $479,000 each. Each apartment 8 years ago cost the taxpayers 479 grand. So one homeless person could have an apartment. 2020, so 2 years later, it went from 479 to $531,000, and some of them got up to $750,000. 2 years later, 2022, city audit found that one project was $837,000 per apartment. Now, the homeless have been setting up their own tent encampments. So the city of Los Angeles has a new pilot program, and they're setting up tents for $2,600. You could go to Bass Pro and get a cheaper tent than that. Los Angeles homeless people are being put up in brand new apartments now, though, in ritzy neighborhoods that cost not 479, not 531, not 837,000, but $1.5 million. It is really good to be homeless in California. It's good to be homeless, but not so good to be a billionaire, which will take us to our last piece of the day, which comes from Fortune. Headline: The tax escape map. Billionaires are bolting for Florida from the West Coast and taking billions in tax revenue with them. So the guys who have all the wealth, they want out because they don't want to have it stolen. I mean, taxed from them. Here's the list of the ne'er-do-wells. Larry Page from Google, Sergey Brin from Google. They're both worth over $200 billion. You got Howard Schultz and Mark Zuckerberg. Schultz was from Starbucks, Jeff Bezos from Amazon, Peter Thiel, the PayPal guy, Larry Ellison from Oracle. All of them have left the West Coast, from Washington State, California, and they all came to my neck of the woods here in Florida to bring all their money down here to, benefit our economy. Unfortunately, they're all going to be in the same area where the iguana hunting is going on. So maybe I'll reach out to one of them. Maybe Larry Ellison will front me some money for a bass boat. But why would they be leaving places like California? Well, there's the billionaire tax that's now going to be on the ballot. It's going to be a ballot measure. They're going to need a significant number of signatures, like 800,000 signatures. They sign it. It's going to be a billionaire tax to take about $100 billion in revenue away from people like them. And they all left before it could be retroactively applied to them. And the same thing also went down in Washington State, where Bezos from Amazon and Schultz left. They were in Seattle because they now have, again, a high income tax that hits you for 10% if you earn over $1 million. And they'll just take that money and use it towards things like, homeless, so that they can go from $1.5 million units to $3 million units. And guys, these things are ballot measures. They're going to pass on through. Why? Because in these communist enclaves, these ceded territories like Washington State and California, it functions as this: 2 wolves and a sheep go to vote on what to have for dinner. And there are way more people who are happy to just take that is not theirs from those. And I have no love lost for the Jeff Bezos and the Mark Zuckerbergs, but that's their money. That's their money. And you're going to vote to take away their money because class warfare, because it works. It's effective. It gets people like Gavin Newsom elected, and it will get him elected nationwide. There are far more people in this country who are easily manipulated to just get mad at a select few and say, if only we can punish them, we can take what is theirs and redistribute it from each according to his ability to each according to his needs, then we will all thrive. You put people through enough pain. Housing shortages due to illegal aliens taking up all the houses, job shortages due to illegal aliens taking up all the jobs. You have high prices, inflation, economic recession, food shortages because of our kinetic operation, definitely not a war. How dare you call me a tourist? I'm a flight progress coordinator. Oh, and if you happen to say something like me on social media, or you start your own podcast and be like, hey, where are those government gangsters at? Oh. Did you also say that you are against baby murder? You might be a terrorist. We haven't solved any of the problems. We haven't solved affordability. We haven't done anything about mass deportations, and we have not fixed weaponization. We've laid eggs on all of those and continue to do so every single day. And people are tuning out. Election is now. Election season is always, unfortunately. You can't ever seem to get away from it. And there are going to be consequences, not just this year, but into the foreseeable future. And it'll be nothing but the fault of those who are in a position, who had the generational opportunity to fix the problem and just didn't. For whatever reason it was, they opted for the easier option. And that was to try to be a mean girl, to try to impress the mean girl's friends, to get some positive spin in the media that hates them and never will actually do it. They're chasing that dragon, and it just can't be chased. It's not like an iguana, which you can take out with a pellet gun, fires a .22 caliber from about 15 yards, point blank range. Madam Friend can testify to that. Okay. So that's the end of today's program for the American Radicals podcast, guys. I have a fun palate cleanse, though. Been pretty heavy on some stuff today, but I do have this one just to send you off feeling a little bit better. This is a case of government recognizing that maybe they came down a little too hard and having a little sympathy for a citizen.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Judge.
Well, you are charged with a school zone violation.
I don't drive that fast, Judge. I'm 96 years old and I drive slowly, and I only drive when I have to. I was going to the blood work for my boy. He's handicapped.
You were taking your son to the doctor's office?
Yeah, I take him for blood work every 2 weeks because he's got cancer.
You are a good man. How old is your son?
63.
Yeah. And Daddy's still taking care of him, right?
I only drive when I have to.
Listen, sir, I wish you all the best. I wish the best for your son, and I wish you good health. And your case is dismissed. Good luck to you, and God bless you.
That's even better than going iguana hunting for your 12th birthday. But if my son wants to do that when he's 63, I'll be happy to take him. All right, guys. Plan to be back with you tomorrow, noontime. Until then, have a great day.
You've been listening to the American Radicals podcast. Find us on YouTube, Rumble, and X at AmRadPod.